I would really like for all of you to give a warm welcome to both of them, and Michaela will be starting for us today.
Thank you very much, Deb, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you all for being here tonight. DJ and I both really appreciate your time and for coming to listen to our stories. I might need the clicker. As Deb had mentioned, I graduated from Schreiner in 2018, and I am a very, very proud mountaineer and very, very proud to come back tonight and to be invited. Thank you all very much for all of those who are involved in this. I am so grateful and so honored. So thank you very much for having me back home. It feels really good to see so many familiar faces and to drive around the Schreiner Loop again. So. Yeah, slow down for the speed bumps. Oh yeah, they're much better. So as Deb had kind of touched on, I was extremely involved as just a general Schreiner student. Some would say maybe a little too involved. However, there's no regrets. I am so grateful for so many wonderful organizations and all of the friends and mentors that I met through all of these different organizations, one of them being Mountaineer Mentors and welcoming each and upcoming new class of freshmen every single year, seeing those new, scared but excited faces. It was really nice to be one of the first people to kind of welcome them to the Schreiner family. So that took up a lot of my summers. I joined the living and learning community called Global Scholars my freshman year, and I had the amazing opportunity of traveling to South Korea after my freshman year to study abroad during that summer. Just absolutely incredible experiences that I don't think I would have had at any other university. So for that, I am so grateful for Schreiner. I was also a student ambassador and conducted tours on campus to visitors of future students and their families, and also traveled to surrounding high schools in the area to help promote the amazing things that Schreiner University was giving their students. I was also inducted into the president's list every year, and as you can see, we are very excited to take a picture with Dr. Tim Summerlin, at the time the current president. And I was also a student of the activities board, as you can see, Scooby-Doo gang. Had a lot of really fun times just being a general student in all of these organizations. So grateful. Now going into focusing on my college degree, which, that's why you come to college. Within the department, I was also extremely involved and was given so many wonderful opportunities from just the department itself, watching out for our students. On the left is a picture of Command X, which was an in-house competition that they hosted for all of the communication design students. We competed in a series of competitions where it's fast-paced, making a logo, presenting a logo. You have to sketch it out, get it ready to go for various clients. And myself and several others were the fortunate winners. And we were hosted by the communication design degree to travel to the Las Vegas, woohoo, for the National AIGA conference, where we met superstars in the graphic design world, several of which who were from Pentagram, Michael Beirut, Paula Shear. Unfortunately, DJ did not attend that trip. But again, amazing opportunities, and at the bottom, just a funky sweater competition, and Deb giving me my honors ring, presenting me with that senior year. Junior year, what kind of kicked it off and really connected me with Pentagram, I took a drive out to Austin, Texas, which wasn't too far from my home in Kyle. But we took a drive, me and several students, and we toured several different design companies. During that week, several creative firms opened their doors to up-and-coming students and other creatives to just learn a little bit about what they do and just start networking. And so that was where I met Carla Delgado on the far right and Julie Savasky. They were current associates at the time, and you can see DJ Stout in the bottom left corner signing a book. So that was when I first made my first interaction with the Pentagram team, and just stayed in touch with them. So I'll pick back up on that in a minute. Here comes senior year. We are panicking. We are excited. We are stressed every day, but loving what we do. Myself and Mackenzie Wade, one of my best friends and fellow graphic designer, graduate of 2018, designed our senior show shirts, as you can see here, and kind of just wrapped up all of our time here at Schreiner with our thesis projects at the Art Center here in downtown Kerrville. And it was a bittersweet moment of just finally doing that last piece, but it was really, really rewarding. And as you can see, very, very supported by the community and our Schreiner family with President McCormick and his wife. So, this is our last picture we took at our last meeting, all of the graduates of 2018 for the communication design degree. We have Professor Gamble, Dean Smith, Clay McClure, and Deborah Connor just having a good old time. So sending us on our way, ready to graduate. But just wrapping up my time at Schreiner, it was amazing. And as you can see by the rainbow around my neck, I was very involved, but so grateful to wear the rainbow. So I think I always said, earn the rainbow, wear the rainbow. So when I started when I started that summer at Pentagram, at first I didn't know what I was going to do, but I kept in contact with Carla, one of the associates I mentioned. This is and she offered me an internship, DJ and Carla did. So starting that August 2018, I started an internship at Pentagram. And this is some of the beginning work I did for Camp Contemporary in Austin, Texas. So we have a poster and some different social media things. So starting to dip my feet in what it actually means to be a professional graphic designer. I started working on some editorial magazines. The first one was Montessori Life, and starting to learn magazine layout. I didn't have too much experience with that because there's so much to cover in college. So this was the first time I really dove in there. And it just kicked off the journey of editorial design, which has segued into Texas Architect. I'm still the lead designer on this. I get to see so many incredible projects come across the covers and the features, and so they just hand me all the content, and I make it look pretty. Coloradan, which is one of my favorite editorial magazines. It's for the University of Colorado Boulder. Absolutely a pleasure to work with, especially because of the art directors that I have just kind of give DJ and I the freedom to assign art to the features however best we fit. So these are some infographics from that magazine. Again, just giving me creative freedom to do whatever the heck I want. Of course, they have to get their approval. But DJ and I get to be really creative. One, as you can tell, was probably about the Olympics on the left. And the right is Shakespeare's garden, where they have a lot of botanicals that are mentioned in all of Shakespeare's literature that we kind of got to clip out and spend hours working on. So very big achievement on the right. That's hours of work. Another one, USC Trojan, again, working with amazing illustrators for the cover and the interior features. This is another feature story that we had, just sourcing and getting to know so many wonderful creatives all around. And my first book that I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to work on, DJ assigned this to me just this past year during COVID, so it was tough. I couldn't go to any of the libraries to find these wonderful images of Carrie Neiman, co-founder of the Neiman Marcus department store. This told her untold story because she didn't get all the fame and the glory. So this is now available on Amazon. But I spent a lot of time working on this, digging for archive images virtually on Zoom, telling them, can you open that box and see what that photo looks like? Oh, no, next box. The librarians loved me. And these are just some of my pentafam. That's what we call it, pentagram family, the pentafam. On the left is actually taken when I was still an intern, and DJ offered me my full-time position about a week later. So that was the last photo I have at Pentagram as an intern. And then on the right, kicking it off with my new family. DJ and the rest of Pentagram, I invited them to my farm. Technically my dad's farm, but and we gave combine rides. So DJ and the entire Pentagram team helped harvest that year's corn. So yeah. Woohoo. Yeah, I put these designers to work. Yeah, they're just a bunch of city slickers coming to the farm. Some of them were even brave enough, including DJ, to feed a cow. So giving them some cattle cubes. But that was a really neat experience to bring them and just show them what my family kind of comes from and where I come from. And this is our most recent trip we took out to Marfa, Texas. Just at the end of last year. It was for DJ's partners and himself an IPC meeting. Technically, we're not allowed to join, but because DJ was in charge and that was his trip to plan, they take turns, he said, come on down, y'all. So we got to join and get to see all the beautiful things that West Texas has to offer. All right. And this is the point where I hand it off to DJ Stout.
That was pretty good, Michaela. This is fantastic. She's not shy. She always says she's shy, but she's not very shy. So I don't know how many of you saw the astronauts last night at the event last night, but I'm very humbled because that is rocket science. We just do logos and magazines and stuff. You know, we don't fly into space stations and stuff like that. Yeah, we stay on the ground. So. I was influenced by that because they were wearing nice jackets. However, I figured out I'm wearing all black and a blue jacket, so it's not quite. But I'm a designer. I can do whatever I want to do. Oh, yeah, I need to thank. Thank you for having me out. I've never been here before. I've been to Kerrville, or driven through it quite a bit. In particular, hung out for a couple of days with Kinky Friedman once for when I was at Texas Monthly. That was very interesting. And we came into Kerrville. So I just wanted, because she was telling you a little bit of her journey, like how she got to Pentagram. She's, you know, as she said, she's been with Pentagram now for 4 years. I've been a designer for over 40 years. So this is going to take 4 or 5 hours. So basically, I was born in Alpine, Texas, which is near Marfa now. And the reason is, and I'll talk about it more, is that my dad was a baseball player in the 50s, and he was hired by a very wealthy rancher in the Alpine area. His name was Mr. Coconut. He owned this giant ranch called the 06 Ranch. So when I was growing up, I always thought that my dad knew somebody named Mr. Coconut, but it's Coconut. So my dad played baseball there. He ended up getting his master's paid. He came from a very poor family in Dallas, and so he got his master's. Then he played baseball a little bit more, and then he joined the Marine Corps. And then so even though I was born in Alpine and I lived there for a while, because my dad was in the Marines, I moved every single year of my life, all over the country. You know, I was a Marine brat, or whatever you call it. So what I did early on, and even though my dad was a Marine, he liked to draw. And so early on, I started doing these little newspapers, because I was always a new kid. So I would go make these little newspapers way before computers, and I had like kind of rudimentary little printing presses. And so it was called The Weekly Laugh. And at first it was just a cartoon paper, like I was like in the 4th grade or something, you know. And as you could see, just like all graphic designers, I completely misspelled Weekly Laugh. I left the L out of there, but it looked good. And then my uncle worked for Williamson Printing in Dallas, and he sent me a bunch of type. And so the one on the right is the redesign of The Weekly Laugh, which is actually really terrible. But I would do these little newspapers, and I would just go knock on the doors and hand them out, you know. And so that's how I got the bug for doing journalism. So then because my dad was in the Marines and he was stationed at Quantico Marine Corps Base, I started college at this little college called Madison College in Virginia, for my first year, and then they changed it to James Madison University. And the thing that I did that I just loved was I started working for the newspaper there. It was called The Breeze. And so I just loved being around all the editors and the writers and all that stuff. But I also did a cartoon. So see that there's a cartoon on the left there. Then, because of a lot of situations, my mother was living back in West Texas, and so then I decided to go to Texas Tech. And so I worked on the newspaper at Texas Tech. And I had a great experience there. And now I'm a extinguished alumni of Texas Tech. But you can see, like, there's the big spring paper there. So I started using my ability to draw and do cartoons, and so I did this album cover for a student project, and it won $200 from the Society of Illustrators. So then that's when I figured out I could make a lot of money in graphic design. So then they had a contest, and you could win $400 to redesign the Texas Tech band uniform. So I don't know crap about fashion, but I did a bunch of drawings. It's just one of them. At the time, the band uniform was kind of like an English-looking uniform, like with the kind of like the English guard hats and stuff. And I was like, why do they have like an English uniform? This is like in West Texas, and they're the Red Raiders, you know. So I designed this uniform, and they still have that uniform today. It's changed a little bit, but it's basically that design, and I won $400. And then I decided after I graduated I was going to go to New York. I was going to work at a magazine. New York, but I had a really crappy car. And I got as far as Dallas, where my uncle was working for the printing company. And I got hired by a company called Robert A. Wilson Associates. And it turns out that his kids were Luke and Owen Wilson, the actors. And they were just like in middle school, and little screw-ups, you know, like whatever. I see them all the time, and they like me because I knew them when they were just nothing. But so my very first professional assignment was Luke and Owen had a lawn mowing company called the Lawn Rangers. So their dad said, DJ, why don't you design a T-shirt for them? That was my first professional assignment. So I drew this thing. And so they had these T-shirts made. And my art director at the time was just rolling his eyes, like, that is the worst thing. Why did you draw the type? You know, because I was used to drawing, you know. And so then Bob Wilson's wife, Laura, was a photographer. She was working with a very famous photographer named Richard Avedon. And so she sent the shirt up there, the shirts, and this was a very famous supermodel at the time. This is like 1981. And she's posing with the Lawn Ranger shirt for Luke and Owen Wilson. So then, eventually, I was offered, I worked in Dallas for like 7 or 8 years, and I was offered the position to work at Texas Monthly as the art director. And that's why I moved to Austin like in 1986. And so these are some of the covers that I did. And the thing that I love about Texas Monthly is I always tried to really take advantage of what we used to call, at the magazine, we called it the Texas myth, which I don't think is really a myth, but it's about this kind of inside joke we have about everything's bigger in Texas. So that cover in the middle was for the 20th anniversary, and that's the classic Texas brag map, like the Earth with just Texas on there, you know? And then that Texas Ranger cover was actually a really negative story about this famous Texas Ranger named Joaquin Jackson. But that was like a best-selling issue, and we did posters and everything. And that was actually photographed very close to where I'm from in Alpine. And then when Ross Perot ran for president, we did this cover. That was done making him like Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine, which I was very influenced by Mad Magazine. And this is probably my most famous cover. of Ann Richards on a motorcycle. And it's actually a fake cover. It's actually this is way before Photoshop. It was very difficult to do, but we photographed a body double. I had that outfit made, the white leathers, and then we just stripped her head in there. So that's me on that motorcycle, like during the photo shoot. I had long hair. And I was kind of known for doing hand-drawn type because, as I showed you, I started drawing. I started doing cartoons. I started doing stuff like that. So at Texas Monthly, I was there for 13, almost 14 years. I did a lot of hand-drawn type. I would do the type and we'd scan it in, and whatever. This was a story. It was kind of a horrible story about these kids who would just walked into a farmer's field somewhere and just started killing horses with sticks and stuff. And so, I was trying to get across the idea that this horrible crime, but also that it was kids with the type, And the illustration was done by this great illustrator named Matt Meheran. And here's some other thing. I was hired by Sappi Paper Company, which is a really big paper company from South Africa, to do a map of Texas. And so they sent me this little map. And so the first thing I did was I make the size of Texas way bigger than it was on the actual map. And then I made a brag map. So everything on there says the biggest, the best, the greatest, like whatever. And then I've done a lot of lectures. This is one I did, I think, in Dallas, where I crammed all the states in the United States all into the shape of Texas. So I've done all kinds of magazines at Pentagram. And so this was early on. I was doing a lot of agriculture magazines. And so this was one for this magazine called Dairy Today, where we just had the simple idea of doing portraits of dairy cows. And this thing just went ballistic, like all, we went viral. So we have these portraits hanging in our office. And so we've done magazines for the World Wildlife Fund, for years, and that's what the covers look like. They're always like a pattern of like a hide or something like that. This is a magazine, a research magazine we do for Drexel University. It comes out once a year, but we also do their alumni magazine. We do a lot of work. This is a cover front and back for Loyola Marymount University, which is really a great university in Los Angeles. This was a alumni of LMU who created Johnny Bravo, this cartoon thing. And so that's him actually on the front cover, and we made him look like Johnny Bravo. I've done a lot of identity. Like my office in Austin has become really well known organically for higher education work. And so these are just some of the identity systems that we've done for different universities, including Loyola Marymount. So we've worked on higher education and another kind of higher education. For some reason, I'm getting a lot of cannabis projects. So this was one that I thought turned out really nice because I actually worked with the guy who actually started the Woodstock Music Festival. He flew down from Woodstock, Michael Lang, and we were able to use the famous bird on the guitar image, and we just created because it was a 3D box, the original poster was just the neck of the guitar. So we created the rest of the guitar, like going around the box. Michael Lang just passed away, actually, like maybe this year, actually. And we've done lots of restaurants. This is Lucy's Fried Chicken, which is this really funky rock and roll chicken place in Austin. And we've done 4 of these signs. The owner said, I would really like this. I learned how to cook chicken from my grandmother. And I have this idea. I want it to be like a pinup girl, like they used to paint on the front of like the B-52s, like in World War II. And I was like, isn't this a tribute to your grandmother? He was like, you should have seen my grandmother. But we've also done, this is a new, very simple identity for the Frist Art Museum, which is in Nashville. It's their main art museum. I tried to convince them to change the name to the Nashville Museum of Art, which they almost did, but the Frist family didn't like that idea. So this was a inland surf park, which was near the airport in Austin. It's one of the first kind of inland surf parks. I do this speaking series called Pechakucha, and these are some of the posters that I've done for that, like silkscreen posters. And then this is, I've written 3 books. I've designed like hundreds of books. But as I told you, my father ended up playing baseball in the 50s for this wealthy rancher, and they're called the Alpine Cowboys. So somebody else was actually writing a book. I was just going to design it. And that guy worked on it for 7 or 8 years. And then my dad, who's 87 now, he was like, DJ, can you write it? And I was like, well, I've never written a history book. And so I did. And I spent like a year and a half writing the book. And that's my dad right there. See, my father's left arm. So his left arm is why he was able to go to college. And then this is my own sort of design retrospective on the right there. The guy did a film called, that's the poster for the film and a party, but the film is called The Man Who Designed Texas, as Deb said. I didn't come up with that. I'm a Texan, so I don't care about bragging and stuff, but somebody else, the Austin Observer or the Texas Observer wrote an article, and it was called The Man Who Designed Texas. Well, my distinguished partner, Michael Beirut, he had a book come out at the same time, and the headline was The Man Who Designed Manhattan. So I called him up and I said, all you designed was that little island? I designed the whole state of Texas. And so we get together. I've been a partner for 22 years. There's 23 or 24 partners now. And so I'm the chairman for like 2 years. So first 2 meetings that I had were Zoom meetings because of COVID. So now I have the name Chairman Zoom. But when I finally had a chance to have a real meeting last October, we had it at the 06 Ranch in Alpine, Texas. And that's where this is taken. All my partners, they're all from London and New York, and none of them have been anywhere near Alpine, Texas. Yeah, so that's, oh yeah. Okay, that's it. So now, I was trying to stay on time there, but so what we thought was, since you guys are really here to see Michaela, is that we would have a little conversation here. And because she showed you her origin story, and I showed you mine. Took me longer because 40 years. So if you have questions, please just, if what we start talking about it seems really boring, then just raise your hand and ask us something, more interesting. So I have prepared a handwritten list here of some questions. So my first question to Michaela was, as you know, she grew up on a farm, like 5 generations of farmers. I was very interested in how did you get interested in graphic design, growing up on a farm?
Great question, DJ. Well,
she has to say that I'm the boss.
Yeah. I definitely would have to say it. It probably started, both of my parents are pretty creative. My mom is the OCD, help me with the science fair project, make sure it's cut out straight and pasted on there perfectly. But my dad You probably wouldn't expect it. He's a farmer. He works extremely hard out in the sun all day long. Doesn't matter the elements, whether it's cold or hot. He's an extremely hardworking man, and but he also has a very creative side as well. He can grow things, but he can also.
He probably doesn't tell the other farmers that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he has a separate life outside of the fields. My dad renovated. My childhood home was built in 1902. It should have been demolished, and my dad saw an opportunity to give life to the old Lehman farmhouse that had been abandoned for years on the property. My mom and him were thinking about starting a family, and thought, you know what, we want to raise our children in this farmhouse and pay tribute to all of our ancestors before us. And so he worked really, really hard to teach himself, just day by day, working with friends to build our home. And he filled it with all kinds of, let's say, picture Chip and Joanna, but less Pottery Barn, and just pick up abandoned things and repurpose them, but beautifully.
I'm telling you, like this, Michaela, like I told you, like it could be featured like in Architectural Digest or something. I was so surprised because you saw we had a trip out there. I was like, this doesn't look like a lot of crappy farmhouses I've been in, you know. Like, well, no, I mean, but it has a kind of crappy edge, but it's just, but it's.
I'll tell my dad that.
Yeah.
Maybe leave out the crappy part. But yeah, I mean, just so many unique things in the house that you wouldn't think. Our living room table is a butcher block. It's completely cleaned, but it is a butcher block that has just been utilized and just forgotten. Nobody needed it anymore, but you can see the cuts. And it is just so unique that my dad has this eye to pick up things. And I think I got that from him, just seeing the beauty in things that other people have just forgotten and abandoned. And I mean, don't get me wrong, some stuff needs to just, let it go. But don't hoard.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But as I told you, like my dad was from a pretty low income family. He was a baseball player. He ended up in the Marines. He became a colonel in the Marines and went to Vietnam a couple times. But I was inspired by him because he could actually draw, and he would bring home these big pads of paper, that he was doing like war games, on, and he would show me how to draw, cartoons and stuff. And so I think that's a big. Michaela is very much of a combination of her parents. Her mom is very bubbly. Imagine that.
She was a cheerleader in high school.
Yeah.
And a tri-delt in college. So.
Yeah. So I have another question. I have another question for you.
Okay.
If you have questions too, if you're tired of these questions, yeah.
If they get hard, speak up.
So, what was the most valuable lesson having to do with design do you think you learned at Schreiner? Like, if you have to think about it, like, what was the thing before you went to the school that you came out and you said, wow, I didn't know that, like, about design, and or got you excited about design?
Learned in college.
Yes.
Grabbed from it.
From your fabulous faculty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me talk y'all up. The first thing that comes to mind is the experience you all provided us when we had clients that were brought into the classroom, actual clients from Kerr County and the surrounding areas, actually needing to solve a problem, and they needed a logo for whatever it may be. That was my first time face-to-face, actually putting my skills to the test and talking to people outside of my classes that I saw every day, about 10 students in the classrooms, and my professors. So I think that opportunity of like pushing us out there to say like, go, give it a shot, apply what we've taught you. That was a huge lesson that when I talked to other people from other universities, they didn't have that face-to-face with real clients. They had mock clients with their professors, but that real experience, I feel really helped me have some confidence going into the actual real world. And now I talk to clients all the time. So I think that really, the opportunity.
When I was at Texas Tech, I actually transferred there. But I had a professor, his name was Frank Cheatham, and I butted heads with him big time because I thought I knew everything. And he preached this idea of solving the design problem, thinking conceptually. I thought he was full of shit. And so only after I graduated did I realize that he was right, that it dawned on me, and then we became very close friends. And he passed away probably 5-6 years ago, but I went to his funeral, I spoke at his funeral and everything, and the teachers are so important, and I had a teacher in the 6th grade that actually was really important. He was a male teacher, and he was like, "You're good at art. You're not good at anything else, but you're terrible at math, but you should just do art." And so somehow I found my way through that encouragement. I have another question.
Okay.
How long are we supposed to talk?
I don't know. Y'all shut us down.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Rapid fire. Let's go.
If you have any other questions, just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was one of the most challenging
Kirsten.
Yes. What was one of the most challenging projects you
That was one of my questions.
Oh.
Yes.
No,
You go first.
Most challenging project?
In 4 years.
Ooh. Right. Yeah, I've only had 4 years of experience, so I probably have a smaller list to choose from than DJ. I gotta watch what I say. The clients might be watching.
They're tuning in.
Yeah, right. I would say probably one of my more challenging ones. Oh, that's a good question.
Well, I'll go then.
Okay, thank you. I can't talk bad. I can't say anything negative.
So we do a whole variety of different kinds of projects. Like I showed you, like Lucy's Fried Chicken is a small chicken place, like it's a small company. We also like I redesigned the Microsoft Windows logo, the one they use currently. That was challenging because they're in Redmond, Washington, and it took me five or 6 years to change the Windows logo. It originally, it looked. I used to call it the wimpy beach towel because it was like this little multicolored wavy thing. We were actually working on this new operating system. That at the time, I thought they hired me because the code name for it, they always have code names. The operating system was Longhorn. And I was like, oh, you hired me because I'm in Austin. And so they ended up, we were working with them on the name, and they changed it to Vistas, because it's Windows, So I got permission to go change that Windows logo, which I hated. And I was working with the guy who created that and the art director. And the reason he created it like that was he said, at that time, Windows was like a monopoly, and Microsoft was. And everybody hated Microsoft. And that's all they talked about, was how much they hate us. So they were like, some executive said, make that window not sharp and, make it soft, which is stupid. Like a soft logo does not make people love the company. So long story short, I got permission to change the logo. I was like, oh, I can't believe it. It's going to be on computers all over the world, like whatever. And so I had done this before with Lands' End and with Walgreens, actually. I was like, oh, this is going to be the meeting where they're going to sign off on this and it's going to change the world, So I had a bunch of gimme caps and shirts all embroidered with the new logo, this new simple logo that looked more like the Apple, simple. Had them all brought to the place up there in Redmond, delivered in the hallway. Steve Ballmer, who was like the second in charge, he came out there and he said, he cut me off. He said, we're not going to change this thing. Not on my watch. What? So I had to take all those boxes of hats and all that stuff. So if you want like a vintage
Rejected.
Yeah. So then, the reason it took so long is then I partnered with one of my esteemed partners, Paula Scherer, who actually was working with Gray Advertising, was their advertising firm. And we took the same thing that I had done like 4 or 5 years later, and then we actually did it. So that's the simple logo they have now. All I did was I took the beach towel, I did a little drawing on a beach towel. I just said, I opened it up, I said, it's called Vistas, open it like that. And so that's what it looks like now, like you're looking out the window, you know. That was my most difficult project. Okay.
All right, I got one, but I don't have to talk too bad. So I only have 4 years. I gratefully, but I know it's coming. I just know it when I'm gonna get a client that says like no. But I have to touch back on the Carrie Neiman book. That was being my first book. It was like my little baby, and I was so excited to work on it, even though everything was kind of changing in the world at that time, and I couldn't walk into a physical library to be face-to-face. So I had to trust others, and I am usually the do-it-myself kind of person. And so that was really, really difficult to just rely on waiting for a Zoom call or a response even to just be able for them to walk me through years and years of archives. And I'm really, really happy how it turned out, but it was really frustrating, especially when we have deadlines fast approaching, prints, we have everything lined up, it needs to go to print by a certain date. So I think that was my most challenging, not because of the client, just because of the world that we were dealing with at that time.
Okay, Michaela, I'm going to throw you a little curve here. I'm going to ask you a branding question. Since yesterday for the classes, we did a little branding workshop. Kirsten's team did really good on that. Yeah. I probably would have given them the award. However, so my question is, the Schreiner University logo, why is the I italic?
Oh. Does anybody know? We're fancy like that. I'm not sure.
What, do you know the answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there when we did it.
It was italic?
Yes.
Katie.
I asked a question long ago, and I was told it's because it's individual. One eye.
That sounds like bull.
Be nice, DJ.
Okay.
The most fundamental and obvious one was, how do you spell Schreiner?
Yeah.
Because people mixed it up. And indeed, at one time, one person had a branding idea that was nixed by everyone else. But it was a picture of Shiner beer, and then underneath, nope.
That's great.
And the fans on a motorcycle, and underneath, nope. And then a picture of Schreiner and said the real McCoy. But that didn't, but when we were looking at it back 03, 04, 05, at, I think probably 03, at creating the type there, we wanted to, all right, I see it now, I remember it, the E comes before the I. And then, of course, we developed at the same time or shortly thereafter all sorts of metaphysical reasons for doing that. I find myself in Schreiner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That sounds like a little bit like when I kind of over-explain something. So yes, okay.
Summerlin, I heard it was a misprint. There was a famous story that we went to press. And I don't know.
I think that's a rumor.
We're going to go with it.
Early Ask him about Brainheart. That's our.
What about Brainheart? I'm fascinated with Brainheart.
He's over there.
First year we did advertising, they gave us beautiful images that we loved, and they gave us teenage humor. And we said, we love that first stuff, but that's not what's going to sell. So they gave humorous 15, 16, 17-year-old humorous, short 30-second pieces to
They were good.
TV. And it was all introduced. They showed young people in an embarrassing situation, and in this picture of a human heart with a snarly kind of voice said, don't make yourself look like a fool. Go to Schreiner. Well, Brainheart, everybody finally got embarrassed by it. So a group of students the next year made a video. And Brainheart was out walking around the campus on the street in Loop, and he got run over. We kept using the ads, but Brainheart disappeared.
Okay, so what I was thinking was that this. How much did they charge you to make the italic I? Because you know what? I don't know if you saw in my presentation, but we do a lot of higher education identity.
You're open to ideas.
You know, so if you would like a couple of letters in italic, we can do that
We'll
for the
charge you
same
for it,
price.
yeah. We can tilt it back.
I also I think your mascot needs a little work. Like, what is it? Paws up, claws out?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then I had another question here. Michaela, who were your design mentors or inspiration as a student? Like, who were you aware of? Like, when did you decide, oh, well, that's cool? Because I had lots, like, back before anybody knew what graphic design was. So, yeah.
I guess when I was in high school, I wasn't too sure what route I was gonna go. Maybe being the farmer's daughter, I wanted to be a meteorologist for a really long time. I think the Weather Channel was just on every day, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, like I listened to it nonstop. I know when it's gonna rain. I could point. Like, but I thought it was really cool. And then I thought about storm chasing, and then I was like, oh, okay, like that's a little scary.
But you didn't want to be a farmer.
No. Sorry, Dad. Well, I don't know. Not for me.
Too much work.
Yeah, no, that's hard work. That's really hard. I wanted to sit behind a screen, and the AC. So, but I thought about event planning, and then my senior year, or I guess junior year, I was taking some AP art classes, and my art teacher, Miss Flynn, Deborah Flynn, she made a huge impact on me. She actually, unknowingly to me, submitted some of my artwork to the Schreiner, I believe it was called the Hill Country Art Survey. Thank you very much. Again, I did not knowingly submit art into this. I just received an email and said my artwork was selected, and I would be possibly receiving a scholarship to Schreiner University. I was like, where's that? But that kind of kicked it off. So because Miss Flynn even encouraged me to pursue graphic design, which I hadn't really thought of realistically and seriously. I think that's where it started. And so then in college, I started learning more about graphic design, and then I'm hearing names like DJ Stout, Michael Beirut, Paula Scheer in our textbooks. That's what really fostered and really sold it. I was committed to the program when I started, but I was a newbie. I had a lot to learn about what graphic design really was.
So my dad, as I told you, was in the Marines, and so he went to Vietnam in 1968. And so my family, me and my my mom and my two brothers, we moved to Odessa because my mom's twin sister was living in Odessa. And for that year, when my dad was over there getting his butt shot off in the jungles of Vietnam, and he came back, and I was doing my cartoon papers and all that stuff, drawing and stuff. And then, this is so weird, we went to, it wasn't even a real mall in Odessa. It was like a nice shopping center. And they were having a show of graphic art, but it wasn't called graphic art at the time. And so I told afterwards, I was like, I love that stuff. Like it was branding and logos, and I was like, what is that called? And my dad said, that's called commercial art. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. And I always love the word commercial art. Nowadays, the design world has decided that it's a dirty word because it has commercial, and so they've changed it to graphic design, which is fine. But at the time, I kind of like it because it includes the word art, and I've always considered myself a problem solver, which is the commercial part. And I get paid for it, but I'm solving problems, which is commercial. I like that part, and I like that it's called art. So I've always sort of liked that term. But that's when it first dawned on me, it is a whole different thing, 1968. Okay. Any more questions? Yes. Oh. I thought you had a question.
Is the client always right, and how do you convince them that they're wrong?
The client is always wrong. Always wrong. Every single time. The client is always wrong. But that's why they hire us. They just don't know they're wrong. So you got to act like they're right, but they're not right.
Subtle.
It's like hiring a plumber, and they come in and does the plumber think the client's always right? No. They don't know how to fix the toilet. Like it's leaking all over the place. They don't know. They might start bossing you around. Like, I think it's this. No, you don't know. The client is always wrong.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Plumbers, design.
But you got to make them. A big part of graphic, you have to make them think that they're right. So here's the thing. The one thing that Michael Beirut, my esteemed partner, he does this story that I just love. He grew up in Ohio, and his dad was the best. He was the top Heidelberg press salesman in the world. Now, Heidelberg press is a very expensive, complicated printing press made in Germany. And so his dad, his guy from Ohio, is the best Heidelberg salesman in the world. When Michael was growing up, he wanted to be an artist, but he was a little bit embarrassed that, my dad's a salesman. Like when people would ask. Then he decided that, wow, he's a fantastic salesman. And then what he realized was that as a graphic designer, you have to embrace the idea of being a salesman. So a lot of designers think, salesmanship or being commercial is a dirty thing. It's not. There's a lot of great graphic designers in the world, but what makes a difference is you have to be able to convince a client to do that great graphic design, and that's a salesmanship ability. That you have to, you don't have to hard sell it, but you have to be able to make the case. And there's a lot. I'm very good at it now because I've been, full of crap, and I've been doing it for a while. And I don't always. Michaela knows that. Like a lot of times, I just have my heart on this thing, and as hard as I try, it won't happen. Kind of like that Windows thing I was telling you about. It eventually happened, but and we're artists, and we wear our emotions on our sleeve, But you have to talk to the client in a way that's not like, I love this typeface because I just thought it was pretty, or I love the white space, or I love colors, because that's what they think. designers are. They think they're like, you know, out there dancing around in the daisies and stuff, you know. And really what you're doing is you're really helping them because you're solving basically a communication problem for them that's really going to help them out. Branding is so important, and communication, visual communication is so important for all businesses like Apple. You know.
I think there was another question.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you could kind of walk us through your personal, I guess, craft or story. Like, do you follow a certain framework, or is every project different?
Every project,
bit, you know,
yeah.
You're going to follow you have a method.
Yeah. For instance, with because it would vary from editorial to logos. For editorial, for instance, because that is the majority of what I have been assigned and do. When we are given rough drafts of
We're
the
like
stories,
the last graphic design firm still
yeah.
doing magazines.
Hard
We do a lot of
printed out,
online
yeah.
magazines too,
Yeah.
mostly.
Most clients ask for a digital reference that they can post on Facebook or email out or something. But yeah, like DJ said, we really pride ourselves in pushing the client to do a hard printed copy that you receive in the mail and you hold and you interact with. So to get started on a editorial piece, usually we're given the rough drafts and we assess what they are. Sometimes they tell us we would love for this feature story to be on the cover. So you'll assign the artwork for the interior and the outside. But to get started, something that I've really learned through DJ and what he's taught me at Pentagram is conceptual thinking. So you read the stories or these rough drafts, whatever you're provided with. Sometimes you're on a deadline, so you might only get like a little blurb that you have to gather all the material from and figure out visually, how do I express this story in the strongest way that'll connect with the reader. And so thinking conceptually is probably the best way that we go about it. We think, how are we going to communicate this visually to the reader? Because when you look at a page and it's just text and text, just column after column, that's not inviting. Most people don't want to just sit there and read columns of black and white text. You want to look at something. It wants to draw you in. Why are you going to take that magazine off the shelf or not just set it down? You want to pick it up. So I think thinking conceptually about what it starts, what the story is trying to tell.
And we're still doing like I told you, we do a lot of work in higher education. So like, you know, we work with universities all over the country, all over the world. I showed you all the identity systems, looking forward to that Schreiner redesign after this. And but the other thing is, in higher education, particularly like alumni magazines, they're still effective because, unfortunately, if you get a bunch of emails from your university, you had a great experience with that university, you love that your college years, you delete because you're like, oh, they're asking for money. You're like, whatever. If you get a nicely designed paper, ink on paper magazine, you don't throw it away. It's just because it's a three-dimensional object, but also it's like, oh, well. And you put it, you may not read it right away, but you put it on the coffee table. My wife gets this horrible alumni magazine from Albany College in New York where she went to school. And she just leaves it out there on the coffee table. I'm like, honey, that really is making me sick. But she's like, no, but there's a connection, you know, because she had a great experience there. And she reads it, you know. And so that's why they're still so effective, and that's why we're still doing a lot of magazines. And I love doing magazines. Michaela didn't know what a magazine was, but she loves it. She really does.
Now I do.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
what? I was
The
like,
whole
I wanna make a logo.
The whole process, and you work with writers, and you work with photographers and illustrators, and you work with editors, and it's journalism, you know. It's really.
Yeah, it's my newfound love. I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting that when I thought about graphic design. I mean, the umbrella of graphic design is huge and vast. T-shirts, hats, billboards, logos, digital, magazines, you know, anything visual could be created by a graphic designer. But magazines, man, that's kind of where my heart is right now.
We have maybe one more last question. Yeah.
John.
Have you ever been
working with a client that you couldn't convince?
Yes.
They wouldn't let you, they wanted something that you thought was not worthy, a pentagram. What do you do in a case like that? Do you let them do it? And
You fire them. Yeah. And so what I love about the fact that I've been a partner for going on 23 years is I'm part of a very well-known, very famous graphic design firm. I'm not just saying that as a sixth-generation Texan, but I'm very patient. And like I said, I'm trying to get the client to do the best thing. But every now and then, you have a client that kind of pushes the envelope a little bit. Like it's like, I don't know if I can take this much longer. You know, like they're hiring you for a lot of money. Pentagram is not cheap. Think about that when you're redesigning the shrine. So
we'll give a discount.
So
The Michaela special.
Yeah, we do have the family discount. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to your question. Is that what I love is that I'm part of this. There's 23 partners. Some of them like Paula Scher and Michael Beirut, most famous designers in the world. But I run my own business here in Austin. You know, it's like, so what happens is every now and then I just get to the point where, first of all, they're paying us a lot of money, but they're actually not taking our advice. And it's not like it's our way or the highway. It's more like we have showed you all these. Our presentations are all about, like Michaela said, here's how we're solving your problem. But sometimes they just, it might be just the person you're dealing with. They just don't listen. Or sometimes what it is because it's designed by committee, which is usually the problem. And there's a reason why they say, design by committee is not a good thing. It's because it's just human nature. If you get a whole bunch of people trying to decide on something like a logo, then you're going to just water it down to, So basically, that happens all the time. But usually we can kind of convince a client to do something, that's pretty good. But sometimes it just gets to a certain point, and then I fire them. And then sometimes what they do, I love it actually. And so because sometimes what they do is they'll call up and keep calling. I want to talk to DJ. I want to talk to his superior. And then my, coordinator will say he doesn't have a superior, other than, but you can't call him. So, but anyway, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does.
But
you keep them
yeah. That before I fire them, I always make sure they paid up to. Yeah. That's the first thing I do. But also, I really don't like firing them. But I do like having the freedom to be able to do that. So I try not to fire people. So. And on that note.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. This has been really lovely, and I have a new appreciation for Kerrville. I just walked around all downtown today.
Yeah, just let them loose.
I went to that fantastic antique mall thing. Oh my God! I was freaking out. I was like, "This is the best." I'm going to drive all the way back just to go to that. I'm going to stay there for like 10 hours. Like, it was amazing.